Hello and welcome to the 5th anniversary of Fit to Speak. I'm Eugene Obah, so glad to have you with us. As the DC Defenders became the first pro football team in the nation's capital to win a championship since the early 90s, they felt the love at the wharf. But some people aren't feeling the love in New York City for mayoral candidate Zoran Mamdani, and many people are feeling the love for the king of streaming reality shows, Love Island. I've got a text! Actually, I didn't. But later in the show, I will pull Amanda Donohue, the creator of Reframing Your Thoughts and healthcare marketer, for a chat about Love Island's impact on pop culture and dating culture. That and much more coming up, including my take on the current state of DC's Metrorail system and the issues that I had 5 years ago with the coverage surrounding the late Unsucked DC Metro, is all coming up in a few minutes. But first, I'd like to wish all of you a very, 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 very belated Happy New Year. Yes, I'm fully aware that we're about to enter the 8th month of 2025, but class does not have an expiration date. We've got a lot of catching up to do. We've been away for a little bit with these regular editions of shows, but we haven't been too far. We've had bonus discussion with sports journalist Regina Ham about the WNBA and Caitlin Clark's impact, commentary on the departures of men's head basketball coach Kevin Willard and athletic director Damon Evans from the University of Maryland, the shorts on the potential stadium deal for the Washington Commanders, the first vote of which will occur this Friday after tonight's second public hearing, and more recently, analysis of the case of missing broadcast industry professional Terrence Woods on the heels of the segments that were done this spring on Fox's America's Most Wanted Missing Persons. In case you missed any of these, do catch up right here on this channel, youtube.com/the channel, and subscribe so that you are the first to see our videos, along with our shorts, including one where I discussed what Joe Patino, father of the late Gabby Patino, said regarding Terrence's case, which is so important. Today marks exactly 5 years since we launched this program, and the world then, even for producing this show, was novel.
Over the past several months and amid the novel coronavirus pandemic, many businesses, including ours, have had to adapt to a new normal, a changing environment, as it were.
I mean, who knew that you could do a show entirely on Zoom? What was a rarity in the novel coronavirus pandemic has become the norm. And as the old song goes, what's constant is change. And that leads to this. If you were to have told me 5 years ago, even more than 5 years ago, that WMATA, that is DC's Metrorail system, would actually bear resemblance to a normally functioning public transportation system, I would have laughed. Broken escalators, long waits between trains, headways in transit nerd parlance. Oh, and Metro being on fire. In fact, so much so that there was even a site created by Nick Stocero dedicated to answering that question. By the way, here's one Reddit user lamenting the loss of the ismetroonfire.com domain. But to the credit of Randy Clark, Metro's general manager, Metro is actually thriving. The post-pandemic numbers clearly show that. Why? Because when you get the fundamentals right, everything else follows. Shorter wait times, improved communication with riders, be it on the trains, in the stations, or especially on social media. Less riffraff, cleaner stations, reliable service. This is all the kind of stuff that people like myself and so many others in the DMV that ride Metro, that's all we've ever wanted all along. That's all we wanted. And it goes back to something that I discussed 5 years ago on this program. This in the context of cancel culture and an incident that occurred in which a picture of a Metro employee eating on the train was taken by Natasha Tynes, whose book deal was canceled as a result, and of which she filed a lawsuit against the publisher who dropped her book deal, Rare Bird Books, to the tune of $13 million. That suit has since been dropped. The picture was notable given that Metro's laws prohibit the consumption of food and beverage. Now, the picture was picked up by the late Unsucked DC Metro, who had a blog of the same name that detailed and served as a sounding board for the system's numerous woes, as well as on his Twitter, now X, handle. Not that I would have taken a picture of a Metro employee or anybody eating on the train for that matter. I'm all about minding my business unless it becomes my business. But I think the larger point of that was that there was really a kind of sort of rules for thee, but not for me, as the old saying goes. And that in turn, I think, represented it was kind of sort of a microcosm of the general dysfunction that the DC Metro had. And I'm of the strong belief to this day that the hullabaloo, the outrage that surrounded this, and really the kind of attention that this got was way, 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 way over the top, especially from some of the local media, Washingtonian in particular, and the sense defunct DCist about Unsuck, his role in disseminating that photo, it treaded too much on emotion rather than sound logic and reasoning. Much of the local media missed the larger point. Much of them were not covering Metro's failures, and they were numerous failures over the years. They weren't covering Metro's failures critically, or if they were not covering them enough. Or, it was either they did not cover them enough, or they served merely as stenographers, not real journalists like yours truly. So what does that do? It leaves bloggers, it leaves, those on social media, and it leaves real journalists to fill in the gaps. In fact, ironically, it was in this DCist article in which former WAMU transportation reporter Martin DeCaro stated in part, quote, "You'd find problems on the rail faster on his account than by following Metro's official account. One reason why accounts like his and other similar accounts that follow Metro, of which there are many, have such large followings is because for years, Metro did a poor job of communicating with the public through social media." The article went on to note that Unsucked's blog was at the forefront of noticing that the quality of Metro's service had worsened long before the transit agency acknowledged it. And again, I dare say, before much of the media here locally covered it. You see, the one person that actually did what the media was supposed to do in holding Metro accountable, holding Metro's feet to the fire, was Unsuck. And instead of deriding him with all kinds of nonsense, especially screeds that are better suited to outlets that are as bankrupt as Dr. Phil's Merit Street Media, or perhaps to his upcoming new venture, that we here in the DMV should be grateful for the work that Unsuck did up to his passing. And I think that if Unsuck were still alive today, that he would be very proud, I think, of what Metro now has become in this post-pandemic era, even getting back to expanding service on the weekends to 2 a.m. Now, that's still an hour shorter of what it was over a decade ago, but there's definitely a difference. I had the opportunity recently to finally take the Silver Line extension all the way out to the terminus Ashburn, and I marveled at what is possible when a public transportation system actually does what it's supposed to do. I even got to sample some wings. Metro's no longer winging it, and that's a good thing. Given what's been happening in the media landscape, especially with CBS and many others, independent media, the kind of media that you're watching with this program, is more important than ever. A fact that I was reminded of recently in visiting MLK Library in DC, where Chris Wallace, formerly of Fox and CNN, headlined an event hosted by Pointer. After all, quality journalism is critical to the functioning of our society, and a quality public transportation system is critical to the functioning of this region, which is better because of it, thanks not just in large part to Randy Clark, but to those of us who actually practice journalism the way it's supposed to. And joining me now is Amanda Donohue, healthcare marketer and creator of Reframing Your Thoughts. Amanda, welcome to the show. It is great to have you on this program. And let's go ahead and get started. And I am delighted, by the way, to pull you in for a chat about Love Island, because this is such a huge, huge show. I mean, I have not seen in recent years quite anything like it, in terms of capturing the cultural zeitgeist. I mean, this is the number one streaming title. I was looking at some stuff here. Number one streaming title during the finale week. Number one reality streaming title on Peacock and all the other streaming platforms. Nearly 50% of the viewers I saw are new, which I guess you and I fit into that mold over here. And then let's not forget, there have been watch parties for this show in bars and restaurants. I haven't seen anything quite like this. So why are people into this show, Amanda? What do you think in looking at this? And I spend a lot of time. I'm usually not a purveyor of shows like Love Island, but I spend a lot of time watching the show in preparation for this. But from your point of view, tell me what makes this show tick.
Yeah, Eugene. It's an interesting show. I mean, it is flashy. It's full of nudity. It's full of drama. It's full of intimacy. So, it is pretty crazy that we're able to see all this on live TV. And it's a lot to take in, but I'd have to say sex sells, right? And we get to see a lot of that. I think that we're getting to see a lot of different characters, a lot of big personalities. I heard one of the girls say that this Love Island season basically feels like you're putting the hottest people all together in one room. So, like, they all know that they're good looking, and it's nice for us to look at, right? You're like, wow, they've got toned abs, they've got tan skin, they have lip filler for days. I mean, these people are pretty darn good looking. So it's just visually appealing, but then we also get to go on the other side of things and really see what it's like to date, what it's like to get rejected, what it's like to be vulnerable, what it's like to start to fall in love and get a crush again. I know a lot of people that dating has just really been a rough time for them, and maybe they haven't dated someone in a long time, like on a long-term relationship spectrum, and so they're able to kind of gauge and have a barometer of what dating really looks like in 2025 through this show. It's kind of like you're skipping the dating part and just going right to the show to see what would work and what won't work. So I think it really gives us a bird's eye view into the 2025 dating culture. And people love that. They want to see what's going on. And that's either single people enjoying it or married people who are just out of the loop and they're like, wow, dating looks really awful nowadays. Or it's maybe they think it's awesome. Maybe they think it's way more open. There's a lot more sharing of partners. I mean, maybe that's the dream to some people. But it's definitely a phenomenon, that's for sure.
Oh, big time. Big time. And I mean, especially like you think about it, 7 seasons of this has been on. The first 3 seasons were with CBS, and then Peacock picked it up and ran with it. And I'm like, first off, I'm like, whoa, this show is stunning. First off, it was well shot. It's very well shot. And, yes, you have a lot of good looking people. You're in person in that villa in Fiji, that sort of thing. Whereas, with all the dating apps and all, it's like we're swiping left, swiping right. We're not really interacting in person as such until we talk more. I mean, so how does that all compare?
Yeah, it's funny because I almost feel like the reality TV shows like this, like Love Island, are kind of like a real life version of dating apps. I mean, you're going on this show to be in a island with a ton of attractive people. So you are able to, go through them all and see whose personality fits with yours and see who you're most attracted to. And then it gets really confusing when you're like, oh, wow, I kind of like multiple people. So, I mean, I think we've all, anybody that's used a dating app knows that sometimes we're, having a conversation with multiple people at a time. And it gets kind of challenging because it's like, who do you go for? It's basically, I mean, I think the best experience is to kind of do this a bit of speed dating. I think that that's the whole point of the show, is to speed date and see what fits with you. And it does take time, and I would argue it takes longer than 6 weeks, which I believe is how long the show airs for. Um, but I just, yeah, I think it's not that far off from dating apps, to be honest. I think it's just actually forcing people to actually face each other in person. Whereas sometimes with the dating apps, people are like, I'd rather hide behind the screen and never meet you. So the people on the Love Island are a little more prone to vulnerability, more heartbreak, than people that are just, using the dating apps as a way to entertain themselves.
Yeah, and I mean, you touched on something that I think was something that we kind of sort of touched on the last time you were on the program, and that was on the whole thing about what COVID has done in terms of our interactions, especially face to face, as opposed to the virtual aspects of it. And one of the things that I was reading actually before we got on to record the program was something in the Atlantic. I was reading that there was somebody there that said that they weren't rooting for anybody because there wasn't actual connection. It was kind of like situationship island, that sort of thing. And I guess I'm wondering, in terms of this, it's like, I think the premise of these shows, like be it Love Island, be it The Bachelor, that sort of thing, even Golden Bachelor, is that you'll find your I kind of sort of your Prince Charming, your kind of live happily ever after, that sort of thing. And there was a study that was done that's like the success rate of these shows in terms of that. I was really thinking that for Love Island, it's like 10% of the couples actually stay together. And I'm sure that if we were to look at The Bachelor, Bachelorette, some of those shows, so you'll probably have some somewhat similar stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess, I don't know, what does that say about the premise of these type of shows? Is it truly happily ever after, that sort of thing? Or is it something that should be, to take from your project, reframed? Should the premise of reality shows like Love Island and Bachelor and some of the others, should they be reframed if ultimately some of these couples may not end up staying together?
Yeah, I mean, I do think they should have a total rebrand and call it Situationship Island, to be honest. It does not seem like it's leading to love. And something that just came up in my mind the other day was, I don't understand how they're taking these people that claim they're ready to meet their person. However, sometimes you'll hear about the living situation, their jobs, and they are in a position, a role where they cannot get up and leave. And that's where I get really confused by these shows, is I'm surprised they're not kind of making the remote worker the major applicant or person eligible for these shows, because you have the one guy named Taylor who is works on a farm and very loyal to his town in Oklahoma. And I'm like, I really hope this girl likes moving from a big city where you have diversity over to a tiny little town in Oklahoma, and she's going to be wearing cowgirl boots. I mean, it's just a lot of it doesn't even make sense to me in that capacity, because I think just being able to meet somebody and feel a good connection, and then assuming that the next step is that you're going to up your whole life, quit your job, move to their town and make it work, seems really bizarre to me. But at the same time, I guess there's also that long distance component to it, which if you can get through a long distance relationship for a year or more, I think that's impressive. And it shows that you guys are able to compromise and work through a challenging time. So at the end of the day, Love Island it sounds like it's hard to find love, in my opinion.
I mean, this
It's
is
just
superficial, Amanda, because part of me, when I see the show, right, you have a lot of good-looking people on the show. The cast is very good-looking. Everybody's out in their swimsuits and, swim trunks and, whatnot. Would the show remotely work if you did not have a young cast of 20 somethings, if people were actually clothed, and all that sort of thing, would the show actually work? Would the appeal be taken away if they were, if we were in a normal maybe setting? Not to say that Fiji isn't normal, it is, but like you get where I'm going with this.
yeah. Yeah, I think we got to see that with The Golden Bachelor. That's another reality TV show that I enjoyed. And that's with older folk, and they're a little more classy, and it's not all about being in bathing suits and making out the whole episode. It is still in a beautiful place, but I kind of had more hope for the older generations than I have the younger generations. They just seem to approach love with a little more couth, a little more, discrepancy, just really making sure that they fit into their lifestyle. Older people tend to know their values more than younger people. So, we have seen that in that. And, I think there's only been one successful couple out of two on that show so far, but it's still early. But outside of that, I really love the idea of reality TV shows that are actually in somebody's hometown, in their hometown environment, where it's a neighbor that a guy or a girl that they had never met before. They just maybe weren't on dating apps, didn't match, never ran into each other. And then this show is kind of bringing people together that, okay, I can see my life merging with yours. You live down the street. Like, that's way more feasible than me moving across the country. So, I think just the format of the show is a bit crazy, but I mean, that's what gets people watching, right? I mean, we all want a little escape from our own lives, and seeing something in the middle of Fiji is really appealing to our eyes.
Yeah, I mean the show. I mean Fiji. I mean that whole villa is stunning. And I mean, credit to the producers. I mean, it's beautifully shot. And I mean, I like the show better than I thought I would, honestly. I mean, in fact, I would say that I give credit to the producers on this, because this is very much kind of, reality show meets soap opera. I kind of like the layering of some of the storylines and some of that nature. One of the other things I think you mentioned about the difference between the older generation and the younger generation. I want to go back to what we were mentioning earlier on in the Atlantic, where we were talking about situationships. And it was said here that if this season feels like Situationship Island, that's because Gen Z is the situationship generation, one in which many young people believe in love and want it badly, but have a real sense of anxiety as to how to go about it. Do you think that there is that, you got to touch on this, but do you think Generation Z is the situationship generation, or is this stuff not really unique to just Gen Z? Are the anxieties that people feel about dating or meeting somebody at a bar or, a concert, that sort of thing, can that span across all generations?
Yeah, definitely. I think that this is a dating anxiety is across multiple generations. I mean, I think it's especially in Gen Z. I think it's in millennials, maybe a little bit of Gen X. I think that the dating environment is so different, and we don't really have a dating guidebook on how to navigate it. It's the first time we've ever had dating apps and dating websites and social media at the tip of our hands every day. It's like we just have so much to navigate, and there's no guidebook on it, and we're kind of failing at dating miserably, to be honest. I think that we rather hide behind our phones and flirt than actually go out and meet face to face. So it seems to be a widespread issue, but I think people are going to start craving real life connection. I think that we're getting to the end of it. I hope. I think it all started in 2020 when COVID happened. And I think it has been 5 years, but that's not really that long ago in the grand scheme of things. I think we're learning how to get back out there. And I'm excited to see things get better. I have hope they're going to get better. I think that we're just now talking about how to navigate it better now. I follow a lot of dating coaches, and they have millions of likes on their posts because people don't know what the heck to do anymore. There's just it's an interesting thing. Oh, and one other thing I'll say is that we are tending to meet our person a little later in life. I've noticed. So, or maybe we're pushing it off because we really love our job, or we want to go back to school and get another degree. For whatever reason, we are dating or marrying later. So that means that we come with more baggage, right? So that means we've had 15 some years of having issues with a partner, and we're like, wow, I keep choosing the worst people. Maybe this next person will just be a part of that cycle. Or, I'm too wounded to date, or I have a kid now. How do I tell them I have a kid? Will they accept that big part of my life? So there's we come with a lot more baggage, but I think that that's, it's a commonality that we need to not have differentiate ourselves, but to come together with. We all have baggage. We just need to be able to push those things aside and try again until we potentially find that partner. That's what I've been doing the past 15 years, and eventually met my person a year ago. So, it's hard. I have wounds, and it comes up in my relationship, but we have to work through them. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a success.
Yeah. And I mean, working through wounds, I mean, we saw a lot of that on the show. I'm reminded of one of the Islanders, Maya, who was the eventual, winner, and one of the winners of the show this season, as voted for by the public. And, it's like, even the talk of love language, and all, because I remember in some of the episodes, she was very, she's very like, she lets you know, and all, how much, she loves the person, that sort of thing. And I remember that Ace was very uncomfortable with that. So, it's like, again, sometimes we're not understanding, the difference in the communication and, how to express, love, and, being able to be their authentic selves. Because I think, there was a time where it's like with Amaya, it's like, there was kind of a sort of a struggle with that, I think, in terms of how much to express herself, and all. So is that a challenge? Not just on Love Island, but is that a challenge in general in terms of being able to be your authentic self? How important is authenticity in all of this? And do you think that on the show that was reflected, or because, there may be people who try and ham this stuff up for the camera, but how important is authenticity here?
Authenticity is huge, and it really allows us to find the person that matches our true selves and that's compatible. So I think Amaya was really good at being herself off the bat. She says the word babe a lot. That's part of her, like, like she's from Miami and she speaks a certain way. And, so she, she just had a fun personality, in my opinion.
Very fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just liked who she was. She was bubbly and bright, and, she's a nurse, she's caregiving. So, she's a good human from what I could tell, but I could tell that Ace kind of had her shut down her brightness, her personality a bit. And then, she kind of felt like she needed to shrink and be smaller because he didn't like the way she was acting. However, they clashed very early on, and that showed you, okay, Ace is not your person. So I think at that point, we have Amaya look at it as a secure woman. Okay, this is not my guy. I'm a loud, direct person, and I am not meant to be with someone who ever makes me feel small. And so she was then able to move on.
And found out, I think, with Brian at the end, who also won the program.
Yeah.
you know?
Exactly. Yeah, and they're from the same culture from what I remember.
Mhm.
Dominican Republic. So they had the same kind of energy and loudness, and their families are similar, and so he just got it. He was like, "Oh, this is home to me. This is my, you know, this is what I'm used to and I love and adore." And so it was pretty cool that she got rejected by Ace because it redirected her to the right person for her. Which, at the end of the day, she really took Ace hard and she did villainize him, right? She was like, "You're awful. Like, how dare you? Don't ever make me feel this way." Instead of acting that way, she could have, said, "Okay, thank you for sharing that. Like, I don't think this is, going to work out. I am who I am. And it seems like you want maybe more of like a mousy type girl who doesn't speak much." um, so I think, yeah, authenticity is so cool and so important because it sends you to who you're supposed to meet. And she stayed true to that throughout all 30 plus episodes.
Which I thought was wonderful. I really thought that she really, I think of all of the Islanders, was one of the most authentic folks. It's like it kind of take me for, how I am, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
And, you're not going to, reduce me to anything that I'm not. So I
yep.
thought that was really, really good. And one of the other things that I want to touch on real quick, Amanda, the remaining time that we've got is what do you make? These guys are on the show, these Islanders, they're together for the 6 week run of the program. The show is shot in real time, and all, which is also part of the appeal of this. And you have the public, of course, at certain intervals that will vote, for these people or against these people, whatever the case may be. In terms of the reality genre, especially in the context of Love Island, what do you make of the importance of being able to maintain that mental health in doing a show like this where you're going to be scrutinized? I mean, there were some posts I saw that even from producers of the show on Insta, it's like, hey, let's be respectful of the Islanders and the host Ariana Madix and so forth. And there've been some stuff. There were 2 Islanders that were booted for racist social media posts and that sort of thing. So how important is that aspect when you're really kind of sort of under the microscope of the public all like
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, I think mental health is always number one in my mind. And I think that we know that social media is creating a ton of depression and anxiety in people. The cyberbullying is getting worse, it seems. And so, one thing that I learned is that on Love Island, they do not have access to the outside world. They do not have phones. They don't have internet. They are stuck in their bubble. And, while that sounds really terrifying to all of us because we're all obsessed with technology, it actually is kind of a beautiful thing because one, it does not sway their opinion. If they see somebody, "Oh, I don't think he's right for you. I think he's right for you." And then you're like, "Wait, what?" Now I'm all confused. So you're not really going with your gut at that point. You're going with what everybody else is saying. But two, you're not seeing all the cyberbullying, like, "Oh, like you looked awful in that episode," or you said all the wrong things. So protecting them that way, I actually think is great. So for 6 weeks, they do not have access. And then going off the show, then they can reintegrate back into society and see their phones. And I did hear on a podcast that Taylor and Clark, they had said, "I did not touch my social media for weeks." They said, "I wanted to get a lot of love from my family and tell them what happened and talk to my friends, people that support me." And so they kind of like almost like wanted to build themselves up with support and love before eventually being like, "Okay, it might be time to start seeing what's on social media." But I could only imagine that they have a million opinions coming at them, mostly probably negative, to be honest. I think people hide behind the screen to say negative things and have a lot of opinions. So yeah, I mean, the best that a producer can do is say, "Hey guys, like remember these are real life people that, hear and see what you have to say. And while you might not think it really hurts them, it could really lead to some mental health problems." And so showing that awareness is really good. I haven't seen that happen much personally, but I think it should be a whole campaign that, anytime someone goes on a reality TV, that they should campaign to say they're on a show, it's a reality show, but let's just say that most of this is produced. One show you would have to watch, Eugene, it's great. It's called Unreal. I don't know if you've seen that yet, but it's behind the scenes of reality TV, and it really shows you how much they influence it. So you have to remember that while these people are being authentic, they do have somebody telling them to do certain things to get more viewership. So it's a mix of everything.
Yeah, Amanda, I think that definitely, in terms of the mental health aspects of it, it is so important. And I found it very notable that the producers actually made at least some emphasis of that. And I mean, there is a duty of care. There is a extensive, aftercare after they get off of the island. But even during the show, there is a lot of stuff that is put in place as well. I think about the fact that on Peacock, you can get away with so much more. Remember that the first 3 seasons of Love Island was on CBS. And I have to compare the CBS episodes versus the Peacock episodes, but I can only imagine that the CBS episodes were probably far more tame than what people will see on Peacock. So, and you have seen some of these challenges, that sort of thing. People sometimes will feel some kind of way, at all. When there are a couple of other people and that sort of thing, that's seemingly natural. And that kind of sort of leads to my final question of today, and that is, now with Love Island capturing pop culture in the way that it's done, and again, it's remarkable given that this is the 7th season of the show, and this has taken off in the way that it has. Should we reframe dating and dating culture in the context of Love Island? Is it going to be socially acceptable at this point, for everybody to just kind of sort of, let's go around, and all to all different types of people. Let's juggle people around, that sort of thing. Like, I don't know. What do you see here, Amanda, for maybe reframing the dating culture here in this country and maybe even in the world?
Yeah, I would say that you should definitely look at Love Island and take it with a grain of salt. I think that it's not that realistic. I think that we are a little more open to polygamy and open relationships and dating around. So I have seen that, as something that is new in the dating environment. However, I think at our core, most of us do want, our person. And I just don't feel like 6 weeks is enough time to find that person, especially in your mid 20s. Maybe other people feel strongly about that, but I think we're still figuring out who we are, what our life might look like, what our values are. So it's hard for me to take anybody that seriously in their 20s. Maybe that's not a good way to look at it, but that's how I feel. And I just think it's something that you can look at as a lesson on individual relationships. Like, okay, she said this and he did that. Okay, now from an outsider perspective, I can see where that went wrong. So it's kind of like we get to have a magnifying glass on different relationship dynamics that that are good or bad or neutral. We get to make those decisions for ourselves. So we get to kind of get examples of what to do, what not to do. And I think that's the coolest thing to take away from it. Outside of that, it's very entertaining. It's dramatic. And, when we're bored at night after work, it's a fun way to kill a couple hours.
Oh, most definitely, Amanda. I mean, it was, for me, in terms of looking at this, probably some of the most fun I've had on the streaming platform in terms of actually watching the show. Because again, this melds for me I think everybody knows I'm a huge fan of the former NBC soap opera Passions. So, I mean, it delves the soap opera aspect, the reality aspect as well. And, I think that I liked what you said about there's a lot of folks in their 20s, which most of this cast are. Most people's brains are not fully cooked until at least your late 20s. At all. So I think for a lot of these guys, a lot of the Islanders, I think they have got uh, plenty of time, really, to think about really their next steps. I mean, for the winners, of the show, I mean, you think about the winners of the show here, I'm like, look, Amaya and Brian, I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought that at the finale, I was like, oh, okay, maybe there's going to be something there. So we'll see about them. Maybe we'll do another show about that at some point. But Amanda, I am delighted, as I said, to have been able to pull you in for an extensive chat to talk about Love Island and the whole dating culture in general. So Amanda Donohue, the creator of Reframing Your Thoughts and a healthcare marketer as well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I had fun.
Same here.
I stand up here today with a clear understanding of the enormity of the moment, not just for me, but for all of you, for the University of Maryland, for the athletic department, for the coaches, and for the enterprise of college athletics. The college football playoffs, conference, everything seems to be changing right now. Conference realignment, college football playoffs, name, image, and likeness, roster limits, television rights, transfer windows, the very business of the model of college athletics, all changing. It was President Kennedy who once famously said, "Change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past and the present are certain to miss the future." I love that quote, because inherent in its words is opportunity. For those willing to grasp the mantle, there is an opportunity for change, opportunity for growth, for innovation, for leadership. President Pines has grasped that mantle. Commissioner Petiti has grasped that mantle. And I'm standing here today because I too want to grasp that mantle.
On the day that Kermit the Frog grasped the lily pad, yes, that Kermit the Frog who spoke at the University of Maryland's graduation, Jim Smith has indeed grasped the mantle of athletic director, the Barry P. Gossett director of athletics, that is, at the University of Maryland. And earlier this month, Diana Sabau was announced as the senior deputy AD. These are home run hires, absolute home run hires. And it's quite remarkable because Maryland at times have been very risk averse. They've made sometimes safe hires, or as the kids would say, mid hires. But these are exceptional hires. And given what Jim said in the clip there, the university really needed to swing for the fences, and swing for the fences they did. I mean, the pedigree had to be a little bit out of the box. You see, Smith never directed a college athletics program. He ran the Ohio State University's Alumni Association, but he's got the pro experience in Atlanta, having been with the Braves, Falcons, and United, not to mention the design and development of the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And for Senior Deputy Athletic Director Sabau, she too was at the Ohio State University for 2 decades in the same capacity, as well as serving in the Big Ten front office. By the way, for any Buckeye fan watching this program, I didn't forget the "va." I know that's very important. This is as powerhouse as you can get. And I'm going to make a prediction right here on this show that we will revisit in 5 years' time. And you can bookmark this video. And that is, you are going to see in that much time, minimum 5 years, in 5 years, you are going to see a significant upward trajectory in Maryland athletics. Significant. I'm not talking about incremental stuff, that sort of thing. No. I'm talking about significant stuff in terms of revenues, in terms of the facilities, and in terms of competitiveness. In those 3 categories here, you are going to see a complete 360 in what Maryland athletics is going to be in 5 years' time. And when I sit back and think about some of the stuff I've said in the past, one of the things I've always said, and I've been very consistent on this, is that when you win, you have friends. I even told people in the athletic department this, that when you win, you have friends. And one of those ways to do so is in football. And if you think that Loxley's seat is already hot, okay, on the back of last season, then you factor in the hiring of Smith, and now with Sabau in this, both of them coming in from the Ohio State University, what has become a hot seat here has become an inferno. It really has. I commented back in April that if Maryland quarterback Malik Washington fails to live up to the hype surrounding him, Loxley is more likely than not good as gone. The reality is that Smith is not wedded to any of these coaches at the University of Maryland. He is not wedded to any of them. And people will talk about the basketball coach, Buzz Williams, but remember, it was Colleen Storm, who was the former WAD, who hired Buzz. And Colleen, along with David Evans, who was a big Loxley ally, both of them are over now at SMU. So again, Smith has got really no obligation to keep any of these coaches. ADs want to have their own people, okay? They want to have their own people to put their own stamp on the athletic program. And it's not so far-fetched when it comes to football, at least, when you look at the 25-year history of Maryland, okay, in terms of some of this. Among the coaches who have lasted at least 2 seasons, look at these pairings. Debbie Yao had Ralph Friedgen. Kevin Anderson had Randy Edsall. And the less mentioned about Randy Edsall, the better. Then David Evans have Mike Loxley. And then Jim Smith, there's a big question mark here. We'll see. But there is no question of the fact that Debbie Yao, who really screwed up this whole transition with Friedgen, okay, you remember the whole head coach and waiting thing with James Franklin, who would later move on to Vanderbilt. And then now, of course, he has been in the time since Vanderbilt, the head coach of Penn State University, and all. ADs do not want to have somebody else's leftovers unless those leftovers are actually very good. And the leftovers that are at Grill Marks may be very, very good. They may very well be worth eating, but if they were serving up a 33-41 record and a 16-40 record in conference play, it just doesn't quite whet the appetite. Now, I know that there will be people, a lot of people, who will say that, there's a $12 million buyout for Loxley. But here's the thing, they can always be renegotiated. And even if they can't, right? Even if that cannot be renegotiated, I'm sure that there are a few calls that Smith and Sabau can call up a few wealthy Ohio State donors, and maybe that will change that tune right there. Now, I'm not saying, let's be clear about this. I'm not saying that Ryan Day is going to come over to the University of Maryland anytime soon to be the head coach at the University of Maryland. I'm not saying that that's going to happen. But if I'm somebody who has had a long history coming from Ohio State and with the success that they have had in football and the history that they've got, you know, to see anything less in terms of the success that the football program should have, then in thinking about taking this job, it will be kind of like going from a Porsche 911 to a Chevy Camaro. We're going to be keeping an eye on this. We're going to see how this all checks out. Sometimes you do need to take the road less traveled, and I'm along for the ride. Both Smith and Sabau, their experiences, when they really get this stuff rocking, they are going to be the benchmark upon which other college athletic programs are going to be judged, especially in the NIL era. The meteoric rise of the University of Maryland's athletic department will go along quite nicely with the meteoric rise Maryland has made in terms of the academics and the rankings. This is going to make an elite public university even more elite. And I, for one, am here for it. Thank you so much for watching. Listen, there's going to be a lot more where that came from, so you better stay tuned to catch it all. In the meantime, don't forget to follow us on all of our social media accounts for more information, including all of the bonus content that you'll see from today's show. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell on our YouTube channel so that you do not miss any of our episodes. Until next time, I'm Eugene Obah, and remember, we will not be silenced.